We're now getting a live signal back from the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, and you're seeing it here. This is their launch program, which is going through a series of features on the HTV's, the vehicle, its cargo, its mission, as well as the launch sequence. You can see here the English subtitles. Of course, the video is coming in with Japanese, and we have about 13 minutes now to go into a launch. As we get closer to launch, this will change to a live view of the rocket on the launch pad. Again, we do have the live signal coming from JAXA, and expect to be able to see the live view of the vehicle at launch. This is a recorded view of it from earlier tonight, and we'll switch to the live view once they've finished their feature packages. And we'll show that to you in time for launch. That should be around 12:48 p.m. Central Time, so a little less than 10 minutes from now. In the meantime, I'll tell you a little bit more about the cargo that the H-2B is carrying. In addition to those 6 new lithium-ion batteries, it is also carrying fresh food to the International Space Station, as well as 2 express racks, multi-purpose payload rack systems that store and support research aboard the space station. There's also a new science glove box that will be installed in the Japanese Kibo laboratory for use in experiments, and a life support rack developed by ESA to test a system that produces oxygen from water using electrolysis, then uses the leftover hydrogen to make methane and water using a Sabatier reaction with carbon dioxide, and thereby producing more water to turn into oxygen. Cargo craft is also carrying 2 CubeSat experiments developed by Japanese universities, one that will measure electron density and demonstrate a technology for 3D mapping of the ionosphere, and one that will perform a small-scale demonstration of a space elevator concept. And finally, the H-2B is also carrying a small re-entry capsule that could be used to return science samples from the space station. Space station crew will assemble it and then install it in the HTV just before the vehicle undocks at the end of its mission. And after HTV-7's final deorbit burn, the capsule will be deployed. It'll journey through the Earth's atmosphere, and using parachutes will land in the ocean and be recovered by JAXA ships. The capsule can hold 30 liters of cargo for return to scientists on the ground. We're now 10 minutes away from the scheduled 12:52 p.m. Central launch time. At 12:52 p.m. Central, the HTV-7 will lift off the launch pad from the Yoshinobu Launch Complex at Tanegashima Space Center in Japan and begin its 5-day journey to the International Space Station. The H-2 transfer vehicle consists of 2 logistics carriers, one pressurized and one unpressurized. For this launch, the unpressurized section is going to be carrying 6 lithium-ion batteries that will be used to upgrade part of the space station's electrical power system. The vehicle itself is sitting on top of the H-2B launch vehicle. H-2B is 182 feet tall and consists of a 124-foot-long first stage, a 36-foot-long second stage, and a 49-foot-long payload fairing that covers the HTV itself. The rocket also has 4 solid rocket boosters, each 49 feet long, and altogether the vehicle weighs 531 tons, not including the HTV-7 and its cargo. At liftoff, we'll see the solid rocket boosters separate from the rocket at 2 minutes and 6 seconds into flight. The rocket fairing will be jettisoned at 3 minutes and 38 seconds, and then the main engines will cut off 5 minutes and 43 seconds into flight. 8 seconds later, the first stage will separate from the rest of the vehicle, and 6-minute and 1-second mark, the second stage engines will ignite for an 8-minute and 25-second burn. They'll cut off 14 minutes and 26 seconds into flight, and then at the 15-minute and 17-second mark, they'll separate from the HTV, leaving it to make its own way to the International Space Station. And once again, the HTV is carrying this special payload that we haven't seen before, a small re-entry capsule that could be used to return science samples from the space station. The station crew is going to be assembling this once it arrives at the space station, and they'll install it in the HTV just before the vehicle undocks at the end of its mission. After the final deorbit burn for HTV-7, the capsule will be deployed to make its own way through the Earth's atmosphere, and then under parachutes will splash down in the ocean to be recovered by JAXA ships so that the science on board can be returned to scientists on the ground. Some animation coming in of the launch from the Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency. You can see the 4 solid rocket boosters separating from the H-2B rocket there. That, again, occurs 2 minutes and 6 seconds into flight, and after that, the rocket fairing is jettisoned, and then the main engines cut off at 5 minutes and 43 seconds. There is the fairing jettison. And then the first stage main engine cut off. Eight seconds later, the first stage separates from the rest of the vehicle. And at the 6-minute and 1-second mark, the second stage engines ignite for an 8-minute and 25-second burn. Those engines cut off at 14 minutes and 26 seconds into the flight, and then at 15 minutes and 17 seconds, they separate from the HTV-7, and the HTV-7 then makes its own way to the International Space Station for berthing. Berthing is scheduled again to take place on Thursday morning. And here's a live view inside the Scuba Space Center in Japan, where the Scuba Flight Control team is monitoring the HTV's preparations for flight. And now we are seeing a live shot of the H-2B rocket on Launch Pad 2 at the Nobushi Launch Complex in Tanegashima Space Center. This again is now a live view of the rocket.
2:50 to 27 a.m. Japan Standard Time.
We're now 5 minutes and 13 seconds away from launch, and we will begin hearing now launch information called from the Launch Control Center in Tanegashima and translated into English for you.
The satellite systems are go.
打ち上げ5分前です。
It's T-minus 5 minutes and counting.
290、89、88、87、86、85、84、83、82、81、280、79、78、77、76、75、74、73、72、71、270、 69、
自動カウントダウンシーケンス開始。
Automatic countdown sequence has been initiated.
63、62、61、
種子島宇宙センター竹崎総合司令塔から H-2B ロケット7号機の打ち上げ状況をお伝えしております。
This is the live launch feed of the 7th H-2B launch vehicle from the Takasaki Range Control Center, the JAXA Tanegashima Space Center.
現在ロケットの管制は吉野部発射管制塔から行われています。
The Yoshinobu blockhouse is now commanding operation control of the launch vehicle.
34、33、32、31、230。220。
Now 3.5 minutes away from today's 12:52 p.m. Central launch, which will take place at the Tanegashima Space Center. You see the live view of the H-2B rocket on the launch pad there, with the HTV-7 cargo craft on top of it, ready to make its way to the International Space Station and deliver more than 5 tons of cargo to the crew on board.
91、190、89、88、87、86、85、84、83、82、81、180、79、
打ち上げ3分前です。
T-3 minutes and counting.
75、74、
全システムの電源が外部から内部に切り替えられました。
The power has been switched to the internal systems.
67、66、65、64、63、62、61、160。 150。 140、39、38、37、36、35、34、33、32、31、130、29、28、
1段液体水素系準備完了。
We have completed the pressurization of the liquid hydrogen system of the H-2B's first stage.
19、18、17、
Can hear the
16、
launch preparations going along as planned. Now less than 2 minutes from launch. That's coming up at 12:52 p.m. Central Time, 1 minute and 45 seconds from now.
106、105、104、103、102、101、100、99、98、97、96、95、94、93、92、91、
1段液体酸素系準備完了。
Pressurization complete of the liquid oxygen system of the first stage,
2段液体酸素系液体水素系準備完了。
followed by the pressurization of the liquid oxygen and hydrogen systems of the second stage, and they are now complete.
75、74、73、72、71、
フレームデフレクター冷却開始。
Cooling initiates at the flame deflector of the launch deck.
65、64、63、62、61、60、
打ち上げ1分前です。
T-1 minute.
56、55、54、53、52、51、50、49、48、47、46、45、44、43、42、41、40、39、38、37、36、35、34、
ウォーターカーテン散水開始。
The sound suppressed water system has been activated at the launch deck.
27、26、25、24、23、22、21、20、19、18、17、16、15、14、13、
フライトモードオン。
9,
Turning the flight mode on.
駆動用電池起動。
Activating the thermal
5,
batteries.
全
4,
システム準備完了。
3,
Systems are go.
2, 1.
We have no ignition.
SRB へ点火。
And you see liftoff of the HTV-7 vehicle making its way to the International Space Station right on time, carrying more than 5 tons of equipment, including new batteries for the space station's electrical power system, and equipment that will help increase the International Space Station's science capabilities.
We have
a liftoff of the H-2B launch vehicle number 7 with Controller 7 aboard from the JAXA Tanegashima Space Center at 2:50 to 27 a.m. Japan Standard Time on September 23, 2018.
打ち上げ以降、ロケットの管制は吉信発射管制塔から竹崎総合司令塔に引き継がれています。
Following liftoff, the operation control of the launch vehicle has been switched from the blockhouse to the range control center.
Just over 1 minute into the flight of the HTV-7 transfer vehicle to the International Space Station. At the 2 minute and 6 second mark, we will see the solid rocket boosters, the 4 solid rocket boosters at the base of the H-2B rocket, separate from the rocket, having completed their duty in getting the rocket off the launch pad and on its way to space.
The H-2B flight is on course. The Tanegashima station is tracking the launch vehicle very well.
SRBA 燃焼終了。
The SRBAs have burned out.
Now 2 minutes and 9 seconds into the flight, we should be seeing those solid rocket boosters separate, and you can just make them out here on the live view of the rocket as it makes its way into space.
Separation of the first and second pairs of SRBAs.
Next up, we'll see the rocket fairing separate. That will be coming up at 3 minutes and 38 seconds into the flight, just a little over a minute from now. Launch took place right on time at 12:52 p.m. Central Time from the Tanegashima Space Complex. At that time, the space station was flying about 262 miles above the South Pacific Ocean. Seeing animation coming from the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency of the HTV's flight today. Rocket bearing separation coming up in 30 seconds.
第1段エンジンの燃焼は正常、制御系、飛行経路も正常です。ロケットは順調に飛行を続けており、現在の高度は約 95km、秒速約 2km です。
The combustion of the first stage engine, attitude control, and flight trajectory are all nominal. The H-2B flight is on course. Current altitude is about 95 kilometers. Velocity is approximately 2 kilometers per second.
See the
animation there showing the rocket fairing separation and hearing confirmation that everything is going nominally and that those fairings separated just as planned. Next up, at 5 minutes and 43 seconds into the flight, we'll see the main engines cut off. In the meantime, everything going just according to plan. Today's launch, which again took place at 12:52 p.m. Central Time. Less than a minute to go now until the main engine cutoff for the H-2B rocket carrying HTV-7 in space. That's coming up at the 5 minute and 43 second mark, and we are currently 5 minutes even into the flight.
It's 5 minutes after liftoff.
ロケットは順調に飛行を続けており、現在の高度は約 147km、秒速約 3.7km です。
The combustion of the first stage engine, attitude control, and trajectory are all nominal. The H-2B flight is on course. Current altitude is about 147 kilometers with the approximate velocity 3.7 kilometers per second.
第1段エンジン燃焼停止。
The first stage engine cut off.
And there is the main engine cutoff for the H-2B rocket carrying HTV-7 into space, coming right on time at 5 minutes and 43 seconds into the flight. We're now just over 6 minutes into the flight. The next milestone will be, we also saw the separation of the first and second stage, and the next milestone will be the second stage ignition. And actually,
the H-2B has entered the range of the JAXA Guam station.
Ignition occurred just as planned. The total burn time will be 8 minutes and 25 seconds. It will last until 14 minutes and 26 seconds into flight. So the HTV-7 now being powered further into space towards the International Space Station by the second stage of the H-2B launch vehicle. That second stage is 36 feet long, and again, the burn time is a total of 8 minutes and 25 seconds. Eight and a half minutes now into the flight of the H-2B launch vehicle into space with the HTV-7 cargo vehicle on top of it. Everything going nominally. We had all the planned separations and the main engine cutoff take place right on time, and now we are watching the second stage engine as it completes its 8 minute and 25 second burn. Still about 5 minutes away from the completion of that burn.
The status of the H-2B is nominal.
You've seen here animation coming from the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency of the H-2B's flight, and as they just confirmed everything going as planned in today's flight, which is now 9 minutes and 34 seconds into the mission.
It's
10 minutes into flight.
ロケットは順調に飛行しております。 ロケットは種子島内之浦の各地上局からの捕捉範囲を離れ、小笠原局およびグアム局から追尾されています。
The H-2B is in good shape. The launch vehicle has flown beyond the ranges of the JAXA Tanegashima and Uchinora stations into the Ogasawara and Guam stations.
第2段エンジンの燃焼は正常、制御系飛行経路も正常であり、ロケットは現在安定した飛行を続けております。現在の高度は約 280km、 秒速約 6.0km です。
The combustion of the second stage engine, attitude control, and flight trajectory are all nominal. The H-2B flight is on course. Current altitude is about 280 kilometers. Velocity is approximately 6 kilometers per second.
Continuing to get reports that all is well in the H-2B's flight today. It took off at 12:52 p.m. Central Time, just as scheduled, and everything has been going nominally as it's been making its way towards what will be the final milestone of the second stage engine cutoff and then the separation of the HTV from the rocket so that it can continue making its way to the International Space Station. That's going to, the second stage engine cutoff will take place at the 14-minute and 26-second mark, a little less than 3 minutes from now. On board the HTV-7, there's more than 5 tons of cargo destined to arrive at the International Space Station on Thursday. That includes 6 new lithium-ion batteries and adapter plates that will be used to replace the aging nickel-hydrogen batteries that are part of the space station's electrical power system. Those are going to be swapped out through a series of robotic maneuvers and 2 spacewalks that are now scheduled to take place during Expedition 57. Also includes fresh food, 2 new express racks, the those are multi-purpose payload rack systems that store and support research on board the station. Also a new science glove box that will be installed in the Japanese Kibo laboratory for use in experiments.
The launch vehicle has flown beyond the range of the Ogasawara station, and the JAXA Guam station is now tracking the launch vehicle.
Also on board, there's a life support rack developed by ESA to test a system that produces oxygen from water using electrolysis and then uses leftover hydrogen to make methane in water using Spatier reaction with carbon dioxide, and that then produces more water that can be turned into more oxygen. There are also 2 CubeSat experiments on board developed by Japanese universities, one that will measure electron density and demonstrate a technology for 3D mapping of the ionosphere, and one that will perform a small-scale demonstration of a space elevator concept. And then there's also on board a small re-entry capsule that can be used to return science samples from the space station. The space station crew will be assembling it and then installing it into the HTV just before the vehicle undocks at the end of its mission. After the HTV-7 deorbits, the capsule will be deployed and then make its own way through the Earth's atmosphere using parachutes to land in the ocean and be recovered by JAXA ships. It can hold up to 30 liters of cargo for return to scientists on the ground. Should see the second stage engine cutoff coming up in about 10 seconds now.
第2段エンジン燃焼停止。
The second stage engine cut off.
And there's confirmation that the second stage engines did indeed cut off. We've got now just the separation of the second stage from the HTV cargo vehicle come up at the 15-minute and 17-second mark, less than a minute from now. And HTV separation confirmed. There you see the flight controllers in Japan congratulating each other on a
HTV
nominal flight, with the HTV-7 now safely in space and ready to make its way to the International Space Station for a docking on Thursday.
補給物資を搭載したコウノトリ7号機は国際宇宙ステーションへ向け分離されました。
The cargo transporter Konotori 7 has just left for the International Space Station.
これをもちまして H-2B ロケット7号機による宇宙ステーション補給機コウノトリ7号機の打ち上げ実況放送を終了いたします。
We'll now conclude our live coverage of the H-2B launch vehicle with the Konotori 7 on board.
As we said, the HTV-7 is now safely in space and ready to begin making its way to the International Space Station for its capture and then berthing to the Harmony node on Thursday morning. We're going to stick with coverage for a few more minutes because at about 1:13 p.m. Central Time, about 4 minutes from now, we expect to see some replays of today's launch. It again occurred right on time at 12:52 p.m. Central Time when the space station was 262 miles above the South Pacific Ocean, west of Chile. And the rocket's climb into orbit went nominally, with the HTV separating from the second stage of the launch vehicle at 1:07 p.m. Central Time. Again, it's now making its way to the International Space Station. Live view here of the International Space Station itself, with the Kibo laboratory in view, as well as the Kibo's porch, the external facility. Once the HTV-7 arrives, it will be docked to the nearby Harmony node, and the Kibo will be getting some new equipment, including a new glove box that will be used for experiments on board the space station. The station's currently orbiting above the Atlantic Ocean, having just passed over South America and making its way towards the coast of Africa. When the HTV does arrive at the station on Thursday morning, Alexander Gerst, the European Space Agency's flight engineer, will be monitoring its systems during its approach, and then Space Station Commander Drew Feustel and flight engineer Serena Anand-Chancellor, both from NASA, will be standing by to capture it using the space station's robotic arm. That's scheduled to take place at 7:54 a.m. Central Time on Thursday, after which time the flight controllers here on the ground will be maneuvering the arm with the HTV on the end of it into place for berthing at the space station's Harmony node. And you can see the arm there ready for that maneuver, which again will be taking place on Thursday. See here our coverage times. We'll start coverage for the capture and grapple at 5:30 a.m. Central Time, and again we expect the capture to actually take place sometime around 7:54 a.m. Central. And then following that, we'll take a break and come back for coverage of the installation beginning at 10:15 a.m. Central Time. We again expect to be seeing some replays of the launch video coming up in just a minute or two. Again, just one more time, the launch took place at 12:52 p.m. Central Time today. Everything went nominally, and the HTV separated from its launch vehicle at 1:07 p.m. Central Time, now making its way to the International Space Station, which you're seeing a live view of here. Now beginning to see some replays of today's launch and flight. This the SRB, the solid rocket booster jettisons, that took place a little over 2 minutes into today's flight. Expect to have a few different launch views to replay for you. There is the rocket fairing separation that took place 3 minutes and 38 seconds into flight. And here the separation of the HTV-7 vehicle itself that took place 15 minutes and 17 seconds into flight, 1:07 p.m. Central Time. And that is the last of the launch replays that we have for you today. So we're going to wrap up our coverage of today's HTV-7 launch to the International Space Station. Again, it took place right on time at 12:52 p.m. Central Time and is now making its way to the International Space Station. We expect it to arrive on Thursday morning, and we'll be covering that for you here on NASA TV. You can tune in at 5:30 a.m. Central Time. We expect the capture, which will be handled by Space Station Commander Drew Feustel and Flight Engineer Serena Anand-Chancellor using the space station's robotic arm, to take place at 6:54 a.m. Central Time on Thursday, after which the team here in Mission Control on the ground will maneuver the arm with the HTV on the end into place for a berthing at the space station's Harmony module. We'll come back for that coverage at 10:15 a.m. Central Time. All that again coming up on Thursday, not Tuesday as it says there, but Thursday, here on NASA TV.